Well, good afternoon. It's good to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. How about you?
Doing all right. So, last week I know we started kind of exploring that there's been just a lot of emotional changes and lifestyle changes that have come with your recent retirement. You're
Right.
home a lot more now, sort of.
Oh, a lot more.
Yeah, a lot more. So you're home more, and while you've had things to do, you're still kind of struggling with some of those changes that come about with just not having to get up and go to work every morning and all of that comes with it.
Right.
Right? So is that still something that's kind of causing a problem for you?
It is.
Okay.
It is still something I'm struggling with, yeah.
All right. So walk me through what a typical day looks like for you, from say the time you wake up through, going to bed.
I think just so you can kind of understand where I'm coming from, that I'd like to do a comparison, sort of what a day used to be like for me and then what a day
Absolutely.
is like.
Okay.
Okay. So I had an hour's drive to work each way, and I love my job. But that didn't mean there weren't a lot of hard things about it. And still, I looked forward to going almost every day. But I'd have to get up really early, so I'd get up at 5. My husband's already retired, so he just laid there, and he joked about, well, just be quiet when you leave and don't wake me up. That was his way of, being funny and supportive at the same time. But anyway, I did. I made sure I didn't wake him up. I'd get up at 5. By the time I got ready and left, by 6:30, so I could be at work, or maybe even by 6 I'd have to leave so I could be at work by 7, because I was teaching and teachers, we could never get our work done, so I had to be there at least an hour before school usually to get ready for the day. So every minute from the time I woke up and then got to school and all the way there, I'm thinking about, maybe even praying about what I'm going to be doing and what challenges I'm going to face that day. And then every minute is with kids. I even ate my lunch in the classroom with kids. When they left at the end of the day, you have a few moments to go through your post-traumatic stress syndrome disorder for a few minutes and maybe joke around with another teacher, but then you get into grading papers and planning for the next day and whatever else you had to do. So I was there often until 6:37 that night, hours drive home, a little bit of time, with my husband, and thinking all the time about the next day, and then go to bed and do it all again. Weekends, I did a lot of grading papers, a lot of looking for new sources, looking for new resources, talking to people about children with certain issues. How could I help that child? How could I address this issue? Because I don't have the training you have, and so teachers do some counseling, but they do it by the seat of their pants. So I had to think it through, and a lot of times I told kids things like, wow, I'm sorry you're going through that. Give me some time to think about this and we'll talk about it later, because I didn't know what to say to them.
Right. Okay.
Right? Okay. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it felt like almost every minute of my life was involved with my teaching. I loved my husband. I love my family, but until the summer, I didn't have a personal life.
Right. Okay.
And now suddenly I have nothing but a personal life almost.
Okay.
And with COVID-19, for sure,
Yes.
I have nothing but a personal life. Although I have cheated and gone to see some grandkids and some kids, but not for long and not for much time. And now I find myself without that purpose. There's, no matter how much I complained, and I did complain bitterly about the time I spent, it was very fulfilling. It was very rewarding most of the time, not always. But even when the day went badly, I knew that I had done the very best I could 90% of the time for those kids. And I don't have that anymore.
Okay.
So I'm finding myself thinking I don't have very much value anymore. I had goals when I was younger, and you don't get this, but as you get older, you suddenly realize those goals are gone. You're never going to be able to accomplish those things anymore. And so I have a little bit of a useless helpless feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I still am.
Okay. So give me an example. What's one of those goals that's gone that you don't think you could ever do?
A master's degree.
Okay.
I got my bachelor's and
Mm-hmm.
always intended to get my master's. And now I don't think that can happen.
Okay. Why not?
Gosh, let me count the ways. The money it's going
Okay.
to cost,
Mm-hmm.
the time it's going to entail. I don't know physically that I have I don't want to say I'm losing it just because I'm almost 70, but
Mm-hmm.
there are times I'm losing it, and I'm not sure that I have the intelligence, that I have the technical ability. I just doubt that I have that capability anymore.
Okay. Well, master's degree aside, whether that was something you wanted to pursue or not, I'm sure you would have, if that was something you really wanted, there's always a way to work through any one of those obstacles, be it the money, the time, the technological issues. There's always ways to work through that. But what you've brought up is really just wanting to feel like you have a sense of purpose in your life, that you want to feel like you did when you had something to do every single day, when you felt like you were involved in making a difference in children's lives and other people's lives. So, I mean, it sounds to me like that to you is really the goal that you're chasing. It's not really anything else. It's about getting back what you feel like you've let go.
I think you're right. I think that's it. I don't think I'm a useless person, but I feel almost useless at this
Okay.
point.
Okay. And retirement brings about a lot of changes. Anytime there's a major shift in life, be it from having children, getting married, entering the workforce, leaving the workforce, any number of these things, the children growing up and leaving the home, these are all major life shifts. And when life shifts, it takes a minute a lot of times for us to kind of find our new normal, back from, or changing, just like COVID. We went from being able to go all these places and do all these things to a lot of restrictions and social distancing and masks. And this is sort of, we've through the months have found this is going to maybe be our new normal for a little while, right? And everybody's still adjusting. And retirement is no different, because you went from having this very packed, very full, from the time you woke up till 8 o'clock at night, very full day, so many things going on, that I imagine you're still trying to kind of find your footing as far as not having so many things to do during the day. And it can feel a little bit, I'm trying to think of what the right word might be, because it's not so much demeaning, but maybe almost like boring, just because it's not as it doesn't require the same intellectual stimulation that it did when you were kind of having to problem solve and figure it out in the moment, and you have all of these children looking at you for answers, and you're like, I'm not sure, so I'm just going to kind of go with it and see where I end up. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is going to take a minute to adjust. So let me ask you this though. What is something that you feel like that might actually be something you could do now, that you feel like might give you some of that same fulfillment, some of that same emotional?
That's a real tough one. I want to continue to make a difference in children's lives.
Okay.
So I have thought about some of those kinds of things. For example, a friend at church recommended CASA.
Okay.
Have you heard of the CASA program? Mm-hmm. Okay. But I have so little faith in our bureaucracy and our legal system and the way children are treated in it, that I'm afraid I'd go postal the first time they tried to send a child back to an abusive family. And I don't think spending my last years in jail is quite what I wanted to do.
Okay.
So that's not it.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a little bit of a loss after that. I
And
don't know.
this isn't a decision that you need to make now, but it is something to maybe kind of keep on the back of your mind and just sort of see what presents itself, what you might find out there as sort of, as you look through various options. There's other things besides, CASA that do a lot of volunteering with children, maybe even at a tutoring center or uh, daycares for, after school programs, special education type, things, the ones where the children need that one-to-one attention that honestly a lot of times school districts just cannot provide. But it would be a lot less of that workload. It would not be, having to do the lesson plans and the grading and this intensive amount of work. But I also kind of want to focus for a minute on, so when those feelings come up, when you said, I know I'm not useless, but I feel like I'm useless. So when that kind of stuff comes up, how do you typically handle it? What do you do?
I just shut it out.
Okay.
I just tell myself to stop that and go do something else. And
Okay.
maybe that's just, I don't know, stonewalling. But I don't quite know what to do. And so I just tell myself to stop it.
Well, one of the things you could, potentially do is when you start kind of feeling like, oh, I'm kind of useless, I feel useless right now, I don't feel like I'm doing much of anything, it would be a good idea to remind yourself what you have done. Yes, now you are retired, but you're retired after how many years of teaching?
30.
Okay. So after 30 years of teaching, not one or two, but 30, you've seen thousands of children come through your doors and, you did everything you could for them to now be at the later stage in life where, you really just, maybe you still have the energy, maybe you don't to continue to do that, but you've reached the point where retirement was the choice that you made. It's okay to forgive yourself for, I don't have to fill my day constantly. I don't have to always be doing 100 things a minute. And it's okay to slow down a little bit right now. Sometimes
That's helpful. Why does that make me want to cry?
Because sometimes it's hard to, we are our hardest critics. We always judge ourselves so much harder than we judge other people. If you were, if a friend of yours was telling you the same thing that you're telling me, you would probably tell them, well, you did this for so long. It's okay to just set it down for a minute. It's okay to not have to do this all the time. But when it comes to ourselves, it's a lot harder to say those words because no, we should be doing it. We need to, right? We have to get up. We have to go do it. No, we don't. Well, something that you can do that might make it a little bit easier to do that is when those thoughts come up, kind of try to switch it around. Try to have that conversation in your head that if somebody was telling you this, what would you say to them? And then say that to yourself. And as hard as it might be to accept some of that, it's not going to be one of those things that the first time you do it, you'll listen to it, because the first time you do it, your mind's going to come back and say, no, that's not how this works. So it's going to be one of those things that takes some repetitive, but the more you do it, the easier it will be to be able to just forgive yourself and allow yourself a minute to, no, it's okay. I don't have to do this right now. And it's okay to not feel like I need to.
That I can see the wisdom in what you're saying, but as you're saying and I'm processing it, I'm also realizing a lot of my self-worth is bound up in the idea of not being a lazy person, not being, of actually being an extremely hardworking person, of being, I got good grades because I wanted to put in the work and I wanted that reward for it, and I did my job to the best of my ability because I wanted that feeling, that satisfaction. That's a hard thing to let go of.
It is. And do you feel like having done these 30 years of work and reaching retirement age, has that undone all of the work that you put in to get there?
I hadn't thought about it that way. I guess it hasn't undone it, no. Darn, you have to make sense. Huh?
That is kind of the point to this, yes. But
That's going to stick with me. Does that undo that 30 years worth of work? Again, you're going to make me feel like crying.
it's, like I said, we're often the hardest critics on ourselves. If we were to say this to anybody else, they would say, well, why would you think that? You do all these things. You're able to do this, and you've done this for so long, and why would you ever think that? But of course, to ourselves, we're thinking it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. I need to do more.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
And so when those thoughts come in, it's also really important to then take a step back and look at, okay, what have I done so far? And if you do feel like you have, you need to be able to set small goals for yourself, give yourself small things to do, throughout the week. Nothing major, but being able to look back at a checked off to-do list can also provide some of that emotional fulfillment of, okay, I did what I set out to do this week.
You do that with my special ed kids? Is that what you're telling me? Special ed? I know
Well,
this.
no, not that you're special ed, but
Okay.
because you're setting, sometimes we tend to take on too much. And if we take on too much, we set ourselves up for failure. And then it just reinforces that negative thought of, I'm not enough. I can't do it. See, I've gotten lazy. I can't get to this point. And you don't want to set yourself up for that. You want to continue to set realistic small steps so that as you accomplish that, it reaffirms okay, I'm still doing what I need to do. I'm still getting where I need to get to. I'm still accomplishing what I set out to do. As opposed to, oh my gosh, I'll never get this done. It's just too much.
Okay.
So that's the thinking behind it. Because if you could make this 2-page long to-do list of all these things to do and say, okay, I'm going to get this done in 3 days. Well, that's not very realistic. And when you fail, then it's going to be, see, I've gotten lazy. And those negative thoughts will come back in. And it's just going to, it's going to start that negative spiral all over again. So when you break it down and set it into smaller goals and a little bit at a time, that it's more of a, okay, I got my first step done, and then on to the next step, and then on to the next step, and on to the next step. And instead of setting yourself up for failure, you've managed to work your way through this set of goals and kind of reaffirm that, okay, I'm still doing what I need to do to bring out those more positive thoughts. Right? Anytime you have that spiral of the negative thoughts, it's important to then try to go back and look at those thoughts and reframe them. So every time you get the thoughts of, I'm not doing enough, I'm worthless, then you go back and go, well, wait a minute, I worked really hard for 30 years to the point where I got to retire. You get the thought of, I'm not doing enough, and then you can come back with, well, hold on, how much did I do? What did I do today? What am I going to do tomorrow? What was my goal for today? Maybe the goal was to, do 2 things around the house. Well, I did that. So I'm not being lazy because I did what I set out to do today. And it's a way to kind of combat those negative thoughts. And it takes a little bit of practice. It's not something that just kind of flows naturally. It's one of those things that you're going to have to work on recognizing when they're coming, when you're having those thoughts, and then go back and re-examine those thoughts one at a time and sort of reframe them in a more positive light.
Okay. Well, you give me a lot to think about. The teacher in me still taking notes, so I got to write out some ideas how to do that. And to remind myself.
And it's good to remind
thing
yourself.
I had to do with my special ed kids, write them notes, remind them.
Well,
to do it
most
myself.
people have to take notes. At the end of this, I will have to take my own notes of what we did, because in a week from now, it's going to be hard for me to remember exactly what we talked about, and that's just being human. Most people do have to take some kind of notes.
I guess I am human after all.
Yeah, most of us are.
Despite what many students said.
Absolutely. Well, we'll definitely get that written out for you, find some easier ways for you to remember some of the things that we talked about, and then we'll just start kind of working through those, see how those work, how that's helping, okay?
That's helpful. Thank
All
you.
right.